A Walk Through the Overland Track by Mrs Calver, 1937. Leaving Launceston at 8:30 a.m. on Christmas morning 1936, after due preparations for the trip, we travelled by Guy's service bus over the scenic way to Derwent Bridge. The views of the mountains and valleys before reaching the Great Lake reveal some of the beauty of Tasmanian scenery and make one anxious to be on the trail in amongst such lovely hiking country. After a stiff ascent to the Great Lake Plateau, on which is Pine Lake, the source of the Liffey River is seen, and then finally the Rainbow Chateau is reached, and morning tea was partaken. Leaving the chateau by car, we travelled past the Shannon Rise near the huge hydroelectric dam at Myena, and at Hamilton met the other service car which takes us to our first day's destination, Derwent Bridge, about 3 miles from Lake Sinclair. And after covering this distance, walking, we arrived at Fergie's camp, ready for a good night's rest in preparation for the walk next day. Fergie's camp, as can be seen, is all under canvas, and each party has a tent to itself. The dining tent is the only community effort in the settlement. Next day, being an ideal day for the commencement of our trip, we started out at 9 a.m. for the top of the lake, which is about 18 miles long, the walk being mostly through fern glades. Some wonderful views of Mount Ida are seen. Before leaving Fergie's camp, which is at Cynthia Bay, we had some marvellous views of Mount Olympus, Mount Hugel and Mount Rufus, but as our time was limited, we were unable to climb any of these. Here are 2 views of the track, but they fail to do full justice to the fern valleys and glades through which one passes along the shores of Lake St Clair. After passing over the Cuvier River, the extent of the lake can be realised, and Fergie's camp at Cynthia Bay presents a lovely scene. Here is one of the views of Mount Ida which are seen on the journey. This is one of the many falls which we passed during the day. A view of Mount Olympus, 4,680 feet, which is to be seen from the north end of the lake, just near to where a new hut is being built. The old hut, called Nichols' Hut, is about 1 mile north of the lake on the Narcissus River. This is only a one-roomed hut, but has sleeping accommodation for about 8 people. This was the end of the second day's journey. Next morning, being a delightfully fresh and inspiring one, we commenced preparations for the day's journey at 4:30 a.m. as we had passed a very cold night and were glad to get up and stretch our limbs. Here is a snap of our party leaving the hut at about 7 a.m. Leaving Nichols' Hut, the track is up the valley between the Traveller and the Duquesne Ranges in the Narcissus Valley, and was a gradual uphill pull all the morning until the Duquesne Gap was reached, when a rather stiff climb was encountered, and the full weight of each pack told its own tale. A view of Mount Porcupine. We worked this day's travelling out at half an hour's walk and 5 minutes spell, but had much more frequent rests on the climb to the Gap. Looking towards Falling Mountain. Lunch on the Duquesne Gap after a hard morning's walk of about 10 miles from Nichols' Hut. Soon after leaving the Gap, a sign showing the track to Fergie's Falls was passed, and a few more miles and Windsor Castle is reached, situated on the opposite bank of the Forth River to Cathedral Mountain, which is a large mass of rock magnificently towering above the castle. We arrived here at 3 o'clock, and after a small meal and a rest, went back to view Fergie's and the Dalton Falls and the Mersey River. Photo 13 is the Dalton Falls, and number 14 another set. Windsor Castle, supposed to be 11 miles from Nichols' Hut. After a comfortable night's rest at Windsor Castle, we proceeded at about 6 a.m. for Pillion Hut, which is 10 miles further on over the Pillion Gap. The view of Ossa at 5,200 feet and Doris at 4,500 feet is obtained from the gap. East Pillion was seen from here, and during the morning it gradually came into full view. Here is the view as seen at about 11 o'clock that morning. The gap, about 4 miles, was easily made by lunchtime. As some tempting snow on Mount Doris invited a fight, we engaged in one. The climb up East Pillion presents no difficulties, and as we met a lone traveller here, we all climbed up together. Mr. Camel Smith, our guide and leader of the trip. Kangaroo Atherton. This one is Whiskers Blake. The view from here is splendid and is the key point of the whole trip. It is well worth the time taking in climbing to the top, thus making a good day's journey from Windsor Castle to Pillion Huts. East Pillion can be seen soon after the Duquesne Gap is reached until Cradle is passed. Therefore is a landmark over the whole northern half of the trip. This is part of the extensive panorama which is seen from the top of East Pillion. The Duquesne Range can be seen in the centre. Our track for the morning had been up the valley, which can easily be seen. Looking north to Cradle Mountain, 5,069 feet, and Barn Bluff, 5,114 feet in the distance. In the foreground, Mount Oakley, 4,100 feet, which overlooks the Pillion Huts situated in this valley near where the water can be seen. After leaving the gap, we travelled down towards the huts and to Lake Eyre. We passed over the Douglas River and several sets of falls were seen. After the falls, the Pillion Hut is reached. This is complete with 2 rooms and a passage, providing excellent accommodation for 14 persons, fresh water being available at all the huts. This one also providing excellent swimming facilities in the Douglas River. Lake Eyre, 2,600 feet, with Wallaby in the foreground, looking towards Mount Oakley, is seen in this view. This shot is about halfway up Mount Oakley and was taken at about 7:30 a.m. The going is a bit rough here owing to the heavy undergrowth, but the top was reached by 9 o'clock and it well repaid our efforts in scaling it. On top, looking south, the mountains in the background being left to right, Ossa, Thetis, Achilles. Looking north to Barn Bluff and Cradle Mountain, left to right, Kangaroo Atherton, Camel Smith, Wombat Hammond and Whiskers Blake. The view of the fourth gorge is simply marvellous, and this alone is worth taking the whole walk to see. Over the cliff face in front of the party is a sheer drop of about 300 feet, and the trees in all shades of green form a wonderful carpet to the valley. The panoramic view as seen from the top of Mount Oakley, 4,100 feet. Left to right, East Pillion, Ossa, Thetis, Achilles. West Pillion, Barn Bluff, Cradle, and in the near foreground, Oakley. After our descent of Mount Oakley, we swam until lunchtime, and then we left for the Windermere Huts, 12 miles from the Pillion Huts. This view is of Oakley as we left for Windermere. This track takes you through the fourth gorge and past West Pillion through some button grass plains, which made us tired, so the view of Lake Windermere and the huts was a welcome sight. The Windermere Hut. Mount West Pillion as we approached it after a night's rest at Windermere. West Pillion after the mists had rolled away. The minute point in the centre of the mountain is the highest point, 5,100 feet. West Pillion is one of the highest mountains in Tasmania, so a whole day was set apart to climb it, and after walking back over the grass plains, we commenced our rather stiff climb up the west side of the mountain. Our effort was again rewarded when we reached the first top. The mountain has a sawtooth, but some of us climbed higher to the top of the next sawtooth, which is really slightly higher. This view is the opposite side to the earlier views. Notice East Pillion in the background. A view of Barn Bluff and Cradle Mountain. This is almost north of West Pillion, looking towards Castle Mountain and Frenchman's Cap. Now looking south, viewing Ossa, Thetis, Olympus, etc. Even though this trip was made at Christmas time, plenty of snow was seen during the whole trip. This is a view showing the depth of one of the drifts on the slopes of West Pillion, after which we returned to the Windermere huts to enjoy a well-earned night's rest. Leaving Windermere huts after 2 nights' stay, we saw our next objective in view, but before arriving there, a fog completely blotted it out, so we were unable to climb Barn Bluff, 5,114 feet. In Marigold Valley, a large drift of snow had collected, so skiing and tobogganing were indulged in. But all things must be attended to, so after reaching Cradle Mountain Chalet, Waldheim, we had to attend to our faces. This is the hut in which we spent several comfortable nights while staying at this Cradle Mountain Chalet, the garage at 3,000 feet. The accommodation at Waldheim is very comfortable, but the weather was against us at this end of the journey, so we spent some of our time before a comfortable fire, drying our clothes, etc. Here is some of our party on the front steps of Waldheim, some of our party and other guests at Waldheim at the front gate. Pencil Pine Falls. Owing to wet, foggy weather, these are not seen to advantage in this snap. The car in which we left Waldheim to reach Sheffield, and some of the guests who came to see us off. Before arriving at Sheffield, the Forth River is again seen, and here 2 sets of magnificent falls are to be viewed. The second falls. These are well worth seeing if passing this way. A snap of our party and some kind friends who attended to our wants whilst in Sheffield. And as all good things must come to an end, the party at Launceston before leaving to return each to his separate home. Left to right, Whiskers, Wombat, Wallaby, Kangaroo and Camel.